Chinese economic cooperation with Pakistan. In Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir, along with continued military, economic and diplomatic support, mandates high levels of preparation by us. At the same time, this also poses the threat of coordinated action along the northern and western fronts, which we have to consider in our defense planning. Therefore, considering the threat from our northern and our western borders, we have devised strategies to deal with a primary front depending on which front we wish to address as being primary, considering the other front as secondary. And we have earmarked forces for that, and we have conceptualized our strategies to deal with such threat scenarios emerging on both our borders. We have our border management protocols which have been signed between us and China right from 1993 onwards, and we have modified the protocols continuously. But of late, we have been seeing some aggressive actions by the Chinese, but we are capable of handling these in the best suitable way. We have our tri-services, that is the Army, Navy and Air Force, capable of dealing with our threats along our frontiers. Well, Pakistan has been launching proxy war and sponsoring, training, arming and equipping terrorists on their soil, which they keep infiltrating into our state of Jammu and Kashmir. They have also tried to expand the terrorism into other regions of our country. So we find the threat from there will mainly be in the form of proxy war. But should any threat develop along our northern borders, Pakistan could take advantage of that and create some trouble for us on the northern borders. And therefore, we have taken adequate precautions to ensure that any such misadventure by Pakistan is thwarted and they are not able to succeed in their mission. But in fact, they may suffer heavy losses should they attempt any misadventure. I would like to begin by saying that as far as India and the United States are concerned, our defense relationship has received a major fillip with the 2+2 ministerial dialogue that we had held in Delhi, where the foundational communications compatibility and security agreement, which we refer to as the COMCASA, has been signed between our two nations. COMCASA enables the Indian military to get a better picture of maritime activity in the Indian Ocean region. In addition to this defense agreement, both countries have also agreed in a joint statement that they are discussed on advancing a free, open and inclusive Indo-Pacific. During the 2+2 meeting, the two sides also welcomed the signing of the Industrial Security Annex, which will facilitate the exchange of relevant information between the two sides. Recently, in February this year, during the visit of US President to India, a defense deal of more than $3 billion was announced, under which India has received US military equipment like the Apache helicopters, the Chinooks, which are now proving very useful and are being employed along our northern borders. So I think what we are looking from the United States is basically information sharing and continued supply of high-tech technology battlefield systems that we can use to our advantage. Well, we expect that every soldier, sailor and airman in our country must be empowered through technology so that we gain ascendancy over our adversary. We have to place weapons in the hands of our soldiers which are better than what the adversary has, or at least of the same quality. Now, the Indian defense sector is today at an inflection point of takeoff. The government and the Indian Armed Forces have very clearly demonstrated the resolve and commitment to make in India defense initiative become a success. We are looking forward to developing our indigenous industry through technical support coming in from other nations. And therefore, India is moving towards transformation to becoming a regional power. And the defense sector is increasingly occupying even bigger space in the country's long-term strategic planning process. We are increasing purchasing power with several high-end defense deals, either in the pipeline or being envisioned to strengthen India's force structure. The Indian government is very clear and focused in its vision for its defense sector Indianization of the industry and acquiring advanced technologies which will help in turn to reduce dependence on imports from other countries around the world. And therefore, in this, we seek United Nations support to collaborate and help our industry in acquiring high-end technology, especially in aerosystems, aerospace systems, space technology. Then we are looking at cyber, artificial intelligence. And let me assure you, with 74% FDI in defense, India should become a preferred destination for investment in defense manufacturing. And so I think there is a lot of scope for India-US collaboration in the sphere of defense investment in our country. Today, we are living in a very volatile, uncertain, complex, and an unambiguous world. India faces the most complex threats and challenges, spanning the full spectrum of conflict, from nuclear to sub-conventional. In terms of our immediate strategic interests, the key geostrategic challenges emanate from the instability due to perceived misconception about nationalism, often leading to conflict. The proxy war unleashed by Pakistan have blocked India's efforts at regional integration, besides fomenting terrorism against India and exploiting our diverse fault lines. The rising Chinese influence in East, Southeast, and South Asia, and developments in the Indian Ocean region, including non-traditional threats like piracy, maritime terrorism, human trafficking, bioterrorism, and cyber threats, to name a few, have a direct bearing on India's interests. Building upon India's strategic location, our growing global and regional interactions have ensured that our foreign policy has acquired greater visibility. Today, we must not remain content to merely react to developments in our neighborhood and the Indian Ocean region, but frequently act to shape and even initiate them. However, our policy of engagement, if not backed by credible military power and regional influence, would imply acknowledging China's preeminence in influence in the subcontinent and in the Indian Ocean region. Our strategic autonomy has to be further strengthened with like-minded extra-regional powers and underscored by strong regional linkages to provide us better options and greater degree of strategic leverage. Now, coming specifically to the United States-India cooperation, well, more broadly, we would say that India and US-Indian defense partnership, the US and India have signed a number of agreements over the past several years, the COMCASA and the Indian Industrial Security Annex being just a few of them. And I understand there is potential that the BECA could also be finalized soon. So we are quite confident that once these agreements are in place, we would have a better strategic collaboration with the United States within the autonomy that we have maintained thus far. And as far as the Quad is concerned, we feel that this is a good arrangement which will ensure that the Indian Ocean region and all other oceans around, there is complete freedom of navigation without fear of any other nation singularly trying to dominate the oceans. We would like free trade, free movement of people, this area being free from piracy. And as you know, the largest number of ships and the oil reserves and the oil requirements of various nations pass through this area. So we want actually the Quad to become a system to ensure freedom of navigation and FONOPS in these areas. This opportunity will bring about some doctrinal coherence in the Indian military's future roadmap, and we are hoping to improve inter-services synergy and also bring a balance between our civil-military relations. But toward this, we will continue to evolve our structures and systems for enhancing our integrated effectiveness and responsiveness. The keystone here is in fostering of jointness, integration, and transformation. Transformation has to be in line with the changing security environment in the world and utmost optimization of resources for greater combat effectiveness, which is indeed a must. We are moving step by step with structures and processes, starting with human resources, and are incrementally putting in place other structures. My role as the Chief of Defence Staff is to initiate the roadmap for creating jointness in procurement, in training, logistics, staffing, and in the functioning of the Department of Military Affairs, because as the CDS, I have also been nominated as the Secretary in the Department of Military Affairs, which is a direct vertical under our Defence Minister. And therefore, this is the way we are gradually leading to transformation. We are also looking at restructuring of our headquarters of our integrated defence staff and service headquarters to reduce the decision-making loop, which is a major challenge. Towards this, the process of joint concept development and experimentation are already underway in the form of new organizational structures. The entire ministry, along with the three services, we are working out a coherent strategy towards capability development. Perspective plans are already in place and prioritized inter-services issues are being taken ahead in due course. However, the economic and geopolitical disruptions caused by COVID, the pandemic that we are all troubled with, has turned out to be a national security issue. And despite the deceleration of the agendas that we have set for ourselves, we are reinvigorating the same, exploiting this disruption as an opportunity rather than as a retard. And I think my highest priority will be to ensure that we prioritize the procurement process and we make sure that we get the kind of equipment that is required to turn our forces, our defense services, into a modern force capable of dealing with our threats both on our northern and our western borders, as also to dominate the Indian Ocean region. Where as far as the COVID pandemic is concerned, we have ensured that our frontline deployed troops are not affected by this. We have made sure that our administrative echelons are kept segregated from the frontline troops, and we are maintaining adequate social distancing and adequate distancing in ensuring that troops who are deployed on the frontiers do not come in contact or are quarantined before they are able to meet any of the administrative echelons or people who are involved in administration. So our segregation is very secure. We have managed that our frontline troops do not get affected, and we are fortunate that people who are deployed on the front line, people who are actually flying our aircraft, our combat aircraft, people deployed on our ships at sea, none of these people have been affected thus far. We have been very effective in maintaining awareness about this COVID amongst our rank and file. However, some of our boys who are involved in administrative tasks and come in contact with the local population in the hinterland have been affected. These boys are being treated and are being kept in quarantine. We have created special hospitals to take care of these people and their families and their near and dear ones. In fact, the armed forces are providing support not just to the armed forces fraternity, but also to our civilian population. We have created special COVID hospitals in every state of our nation to provide succor to our civilian population. Not only this, we have also deployed medical teams in the neighboring countries. We were successful in sending a medical team to Maldives when they sought help. We have sent a team to Kuwait. We have also sent medical supplies to a number of our friendly nations like Nepal and any other country which wanted such help. We have also assisted in evacuating our nationals, employing our Indian Navy ships and our aircraft from countries where they needed support to get our nationals back into our country. So I think we've been pretty successful in making sure that our soldiers deployed on the front line, those who are required to fly the combat aircraft, and those who are required to operate on the high seas do not get affected, and we have been successful in this mission. We'll see a fiscal drop as far as the military is concerned. but we will ensure that we prioritize the manner in which we are going to make available the budget and utilize the budget that is made available to us. We will ensure that we can cut down some administrative requirements. Some infructuous training has been cut out, but we will make sure that the requirements to maintain the armed forces and arm the armed forces with futuristic weapon systems and technologies that we wish to imbibe do not get affected. So that is one of the biggest challenges which as CDS I will face, and that will be the prioritization of the budget, because all capital acquisitions, revenue expenditures have to be prioritized by the CDS. And we will make sure that at least the procurement process does not suffer, because we have to maintain very high state of readiness at all times.
Subscribe to our channel by clicking the subscribe button. Click the bell button and enjoy the latest uploads from our channel.